you have to delete that moment. You can't claim it like it's your own because that is quite an unfair exchange.
Your existence with the camera seems an extension of you.
I can't take this job lightly. I have to do my best.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Resilience Tracks, the podcast where we follow the tracks of the next generation of environmental leaders and storytellers working to build a more resilient future on Earth. Today we are joined by Pubarun Basu. Pubarun Basu is a documentary photographer capturing the coexistence of people, culture, and the environment. To list a few of his many recognitions and accomplishments, in 2021 he became the first Indian to win the title of Sony's Youth Photographer of the Year. In 2022, he joined the list of Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia in the arts category. His work has been published by international organizations such as National Geographic, The Guardian, BBC, The Telegraph, and many more, and he has done a TEDx talk, which I highly recommend. During his externship with National Geographic and the Nature Conservancy, he leaned into his curiosity surrounding indigenous communities and their ancient traditional roots that bring them closer to nature, focusing on the juxtaposition between the rich spirituality surrounding the river Ganga and the systematic environmental catastrophes that have forced many rural migrants to become climate refugees. And underpinning all of these accomplishments is a clear commitment to craft a photojournalism, both creatively, ethically, and personally. So, welcome Pubarun. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I mean, that was such a lovely introduction, Stephanie. And I have to say, I am as much inspired by your work because I just saw through your website this morning, and it's been a wonderful thing to know that we have this shared passion about conservation storytelling. So good to be here, good to have this chat with you.
So let's start right at the beginning. Photography. How did you come about the camera and using this as your medium for exploring these issues and topics?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said this a zillionth time now, but my dad was a photographer, and you can imagine how romantic of a life that was for me growing up with a darkroom studio right by my bedroom. So I remember I was really, really young, and my first memories of my childhood have all have cameras in it. When I was growing up, I was just a toddler, and my dad used to leave these pieces of equipment on the bed. And I would just go along, like crawl along these equipment and just try to press a shutter, try to press a button. And he would never interfere in the process. And that's what I liked about him being the silent observer, that he would never really tell me, okay, this is how you do things. That is how you create like a composition. He would tell me, okay, go ahead, do what you want to do. And as I was growing up in my initial years, when I was about 4 or 5, he would put the sling of the camera on my neck whenever we would go outside, and he would tell me, okay, go and take some pictures. So those are my earliest memories growing up. And it also just so happened that I live by the river Ganga, the westernmost distributary of the river Ganga, rather, the river Hooghly in North Kolkata, which is a quaint little city nestled by the river, colonized by the British when they first arrived to India. And it has a lot of history, culture, environment, everything enmeshed in it. So, growing up at that place really exposed me to all ways of seeing. I would see a brick sticking out of a wall, and that would have so much more interpretive meaning that I would rather not look at it just as a brick, but as something more. So there went on my explorations, my imaginations, far from the reality. I'm not to say that I was not a delusional child, but I really wanted to perceive more than what the eyes hold. So those were my few initial years. Then I kind of grew up with the camera. When I was 14, I started documenting the river again with a new perspective of really capturing how people interact with the river. And soon after, I got featured on National Geographic. I mean, that was a huge thing for me as a child, as a teenager, that one of my photographs were featured on this platform that they had, National Geographic, called National Geographic Your Shot. And the editor, Matt Adams and David Wiley, and so many more. Maggie Steber, like a legend, Maggie Steber. They all had put comments on my photographs, and that really moved me. That really pushed me to follow this passion, this beautiful art holds in my heart. So slowly, I went into this, and now here I am at the age of 24, still really going at it and keeping photography as my primary medium of expression.
That is incredible. Where do we even begin to unpack? There's so many questions I already have. I think the first place I'd like to kind of investigate is, how did photography stay as a, was it a consistency throughout your life, or were there kind of ebbs and flows? Because I imagine that when we construct these stories of where we are now, I often say, since I was a child, I did this. It's the same for me in video.
Yeah.
But at the same time, were there other things that were, since I was a child? How did that, was there anything that kind of kept you with photography, or other things that could have similarly turned out to be, I am this? When did you, I guess, define yourself as, I am a photographer, I have always been, and that kind of through line?
Wow. No, that's a heavy question to kind of retrospect and go back in time and find out these moments, but I'm sure I had a lot of them when I think about it. That, at one point of time, I really thought that, okay, what am I doing with my craft? I mean, when I was growing up, it was almost adventurous to go out with the camera and like any other photographer would say, or any other person with a camera would say, it's always a beautiful feeling to hold the camera and to materialize a moment and consider it to be your own. Because whenever you're clicking the shutter, you are in a way putting your agency or your ownership over that moment. And so for time immemorial, it becomes your thing. So that really hit me when I was, growing up with the camera, that, okay, these are my moments, are only mine. And I've shared it with so many people, but I hold true to these moments because I experienced it that way. But then that magic, if I may call it that, that slowly fades away once you start to realize that, okay, I mean, what am I really doing with these photographs? I have a bunch of them in my gallery, on my hard disk, on the cloud storage, and whatever. But what am I doing with it? So that's when it hits you. And it did for me because I was really fond of bird photography, when I was growing up. My dad got me, as my first own camera, he got me this cool little Coolpix. It was called Coolpix, Nikon Coolpix. And I would zoom into like the birds and I would take pictures of them. But slowly, that magic even faded when I realized, okay, I have nothing to do with the photographs rather than just posting it on social media. So then for about a year or two, I took my time away from photography and I stopped taking as many pictures because I really wanted to find out what's driving me. And slowly and steadily, when I went back to the river that I have grown up along the shores of, and I then slowly started observing my surroundings without the distraction of the camera, that's when I realized there are so many stories. There are such intricate complexities that you can see, you can perceive, you can capture through the lens. And it almost became a prerogative for me thereon that I will never ever capture a single photograph without having an element of purpose in it. So even if that purpose is as simple as I want to show that photo or that scene to my mom when I return home, I'm going to take the shot. But if I don't have any meaning or any end use case of the photograph, I'm not going to take it. So that saved me a lot of storage, as you can imagine, and that saved me a lot of time in thinking and going back to these moments. So, of course, those were the times I was really struggling with what to do and what not to do, what to capture, what not to capture. But I think I'm still in that dilemma right now. But I'm slowly figuring my way out of it. Yeah.
And then to follow up with that, how much of your work do you think happens behind the camera versus actually holding it and taking that click, or maybe the post-production aspect of, well, you mentioned that every photo must have a purpose, so how much of it is you really being in that space, absorbing it, versus making sure that you're getting the coverage that you need and getting the right shots.
Yeah, I think that is another real sweet spot where you've kind of hit me because if I think about it, I am a really slow photographer. I mean, you know how a lot of Gen Zs like saying that I'm an old soul at heart. So I think whenever I get the camera in my hand, I am really a really, really old soul at heart. I mean, I cannot help but slow down. I like to think that I have back pain, and I like to think that I can't move that quickly. So I just stay put in one place for a prolonged amount of time, just thinking, okay, this is it. This is where I'm supposed to be right now. No other place to be. Let me just sit and think and reflect, and let me see what unfolds in that same spot over different moments. And that has actually been a good practice for me, I must say, because as you asked, what goes on behind the camera, I think that's about 90% of the work. Because if I can give it to you in a step-by-step approach of how I take a photograph, the first part of it would be pre-visualization. In the pre-visualization itself, if you are familiar with the place, you know where you are going and what kind of elements or what kind of environmental interjections you would find in that place. But if you're not aware of where you are going, let's say I come to a place strange or hidden to me, a land foreign to me, I don't know what I'm going to experience, but still then you have a pre-visualization of how you're going to interact with people and with nature. So I really focus on that. It's almost like a meditative approach where before a shoot, I would just close my eyes, be with myself for about an hour, not more than that because that's too much, but about an hour, I would just slowly think how to do what to do. I'm sorry for putting it so simply, but that's really as simple as it gets that how do I take this kind of shot? I mean, if it's a scenery, what do I frame it as? If it's a people or a culture, if it's a community, how do I take their story into account through my photography? And that's when you also choose a lot of your technical things. For example, you choose the kind of gadget you're going to bring on the field, you choose the kind of editing settings you're going to have later on in post production, but you also choose the style of documentation that you're going to do. And that really helps you when you're on the field. And that's how I can come to my next step. When I'm on the field, I'm really taking my time with things. I'm slowing down. I'm looking at one subject through many perspectives first. And then, even if it's something inanimate, like, for example, a sculpture that I'm taking a photo of, I'm almost interacting with it, having an imaginary conversation with it, and people are really going to think I'm a delusional person, but this is just exactly how it happens. I feel a connection to it for sure, and then if it's a person, if it's a people who I'm covering, I like to strike up a conversation before that rather than just going on their face and taking a shot like this. I like to make them feel at ease. Sometimes you don't have the privilege of doing that, so you at least look at them and get their silent approval through your gaze that, okay, this is cool, you can take my photograph. And after that entire process is done, I return back home, and my standard practice was to, up until a couple of years back, it was to get the photos, print them, and show them to both my mom and dad, and get their opinion first on who likes what better. And my dad, as you can imagine, being a photographer himself, he was very critical. So he would give me a nod and say, "This is good, but the headspace could have been better. The color arrangement could have been a little more balanced." And I say, "Oh, come on. For once you can say that I've done a good job," but he would never say that. Hard dad. But still have a little bit of, "Oh, you've done good, but this is where you can improve." My mom, on the other hand, she would go berserk. she is that kind of a person that she would really see my photographs and she would say, "Oh my God, I've never seen anything better than this in my entire life." And oh my God, you're such a great, great photographer. And I would be like, "Mom, mom, mom, that's enough. Tell me where am I going wrong?" and all of that.
It seems like you have the perfect balance with your parents of the one that
Yeah,
will just say it how it is and give the really strict feedback, then you need the emotional support to keep you
yeah,
going through the process. I'd love to explore more of the camera as its first inception, which you've also mentioned before through your various talks and stuff, is this mechanical kind of capturing of the reality and some form of objective truth. But the way you describe your existence with the camera seems almost like an extension of you as if it was another limb, this kind of very embodied experience that moves through your mind, your soul, and carries through to the image. I'm curious how you relate to that sentiment, if that's accurate. And then secondly, how do you absorb the outside world into that image as well? Because you do have so much power and authority by choosing the frame. How do you make sure that you're balancing the story of your subjects as well as your interpretation of that setting?
I mean, that's probably the question that I ponder upon time and again whenever I find some time to spend with my photographs and my archives. That there comes a question of purpose inside this larger question. But if I can really try to frame it from my own humble perspective, I think that the camera in itself has a lot of limitations, even while being such a great invention and instrument, solely, I think, invented to capture reality as it is. But when you look at it, when you look at different photographs at different points of time, you see how tainted they are with bias and judgment and the photographer's intent. So I think I had mentioned this before in the TEDx talk as well, but the very question of artistic intent comes to me whenever I think about my camera or what am I doing with it. I think to see photography as a process and not a product, as famously mentioned by this Brazilian photographer called Vic Muniz, I think that has been the starting point for me. So I do not see what am I going to achieve after I materialize the moment or I take that $1 million shot. It's more about how I am on the field and what kind of connections do I make beyond the camera and through the camera. And in that process itself, you rediscover a part of your own identity because you get to know so many things about yourself as a person. So, for example, the earliest memories that I have documenting people on the streets randomly, all on my own, is that people would really shy away from the camera. They would not be as camera friendly as you might imagine, because in a country like India, where I am from, the public and the private, they are quite interspaced in certain circumstances. For somebody living on the street, they don't have the luxury of going inside their inside their private spaces, and so they are always on the street doing or living their daily lives. And now, me as a street photographer or whatever tag I put myself in, I come to them and I just start taking their photos like it's my right to do so. That is quite an unfair exchange, if I can say so. You look at a person sitting on the streets, minding their own business. The least amount of courtesy you can have before you take their shot is to at least match their eye and see if they're comfortable in your presence. If you take the shot and if they really do not like that they have been photographed, you at least try to show them that, okay, this is what I am doing it for, and you set the context to them. But even after that, if they really don't feel like, you deserve to take back that moment, you have to delete that moment. You can't claim it like it's your own because of the presence of the other person. So these are dilemmas that you always work with when you're on assignment, on the field, taking photographs. And the other point, if I may come to another point, it's the act of framing. Um, I think that is in itself very exclusionary. And photographers need to be always mindful of how they frame. And as simple as it can sound, with the rules of composition and whatnot, that okay, I'm following the rule of thirds, I'm following the golden triangle, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Even in a space which is devoid of human interaction, like let's say a landscape, you need to frame very carefully. You have to frame nature, or you have to frame natural elements not as a part of your story, but as a continuum of that story itself, if I'm making sense. Because the memory that that place holds has to be respected by you as a photographer or as a documenter. So these are things that I often ponder upon whenever I'm looking at a space that is shared by me and another person, or me and another community, or me and another entity. And just to be very careful and mindful of it is the least that I can do. And then comes the practice of framing the story in the next step.
Has there ever been a situation, either, let's say you have the consent of the subject, and however that is, either through the nonverbal eye contact or some other kind of layer, but then you realize perhaps the framing, like, is very beautiful but could have an ulterior message? Have you ever had those scenarios, and if so, how did you kind of work through that tension there?
Oh, this is quite easy to answer for me because I have it all the time. I have it for most of my photographs. I think the thing that you capture on the field and what you come back to when you open that picture is very different. Because I think the electricity that you feel when you're capturing a moment and you've put a lot of effort in it, you feel like, oh my God, I've really gone after this shot, and it's going to be such a special shot, even when you're capturing it, before you capture it, just because you've put that effort of going to that place, spending so many hours, finding the perfect scenario, you feel like you've done so much. But when you come back home to the picture and you let it settle down, you let that excitement settle down, and then you look at it after, let's say, a week or 2 weeks, you realize that it's just as normal a picture as any other picture that you've ever captured. It's just the story that you now need to write. And the story is embedded in the picture itself. You just need to be respectful to it. So for me, the photograph uh, has a lot of importance in terms of how I capture it, how I frame it, what I do technically, and all of that stuff. But then the story, I think, comes in with even more relevance because the way I show this to my audience or the way I publish this on any other platform determines their perception of that moment. And that's a huge responsibility to take on. I can't take this job lightly, you know. I have to do my best to translate that story. So I spend a lot of time just with that. And oftentimes what I do, um, I know it's not the best of practices, but I just love doing this just to be connected to people, is that even if I'm capturing, let's say, a farmer in a very rural setup in India, I would just make sure, if at all, I can establish a point of contact with him or her. Uh, you know, even if it's through a phone call, even if it's through a WhatsApp message, um, even if it's through not exactly them, but like somebody from their community, I have to go back to them and I have to show them the photo that I took, and I have to validify a lot of information with them because when you have reported on the field, plus when you come back and you have a set of questions in your head that, okay, what is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of that? It's just better to, go back to that person and just ask them rather than cooking up something on your own and even relying on secondary research for that matter, which might not always match what you, captured. So I do a lot of that. I have a bunch of about 600, 700 contacts on my phone just from my, field activities, and they're all termed as photographed. But it's still, I would say, it's still quite hard and difficult to really know what story or what truth you're representing. So I always take, photographs or stories with a pinch of salt because I know what the loopholes are. And even for my own photographs, I always leave a sense of ambiguity in it so that the reader or the looker or the viewer of the photograph can interpret it in their own senses, through a certain set of unexplored facts.
It seems that the principles that you use to photography is there's a lot of contemplation at every single step of the process, necessary contemplation at every step of the process. How did you come to kind of make these ethical and workflow decisions that I think in many cases, especially in the industry, would be advised to rush past, overlook, or be blind to? How did you kind of learn about all of this sector and really embed it into your practice?
My first source of inspiration for any of this would be my dad because I saw him when he was on the field and I literally and quite shamelessly imitated every one of his steps. I really wanted to be like him, so I did everything I could to imbibe all these values. And this is more of a I think what I mentioned, this is more of a value component rather than a calculative approach because whenever you think about the ethics of attention or the ethics of anything whatsoever, the ethics of documentation, the ethics of photojournalism, thinking about it as a singular, separate component from the discipline itself is quite easy and quite, I would say, dishonest to yourself because ethics, if you see it, as one branch of thought, you see that these are the rules that I need to follow, and if I follow these rules, I'm good to go. But it's so much more than that. It's contextual. I mean, you will see that in India, let's say, since you've been to India, I'm sure you must have experienced this. In India, if you point a camera towards a person on the street, there can be two reactions. They can be either very angry or like hesitant and all of that, or if they find it to be a spectacle, they would always smile at you. That act of smiling, people think that it's staged, but it's not. It's just the reaction to the camera. So there are so many things at play here. So even with the concept of the private and the public, like I mentioned, everything changes when you are entering into different distinct situations. So just to be mindful of that and just to carry with yourself a set of key core values, I think that's the best part about being an artist, a photographer, a filmmaker, that you have these driving set of principles that you abide by, and you won't get shaken by any externalities. And I'll just give you a quick example here. I think what had happened during the time that I was really going into working with these organizations, getting my story published in different media, was that in one of these stories I was documenting this very remote indigenous community who have this practice of staying in sustenance with nature, and they do it through the deification of nature. So they have a lot of gods that they worship. And one of them is the god Saljong, the god of, I mean, he's considered to be the sun god. And they do a festival around him, celebrating him for his blessings, for a fresh year of harvest and for crops. So I documented it. I had multiple friends that I made inside the community. And when I sent the report to the publishing organization, they had published the name of the primary god wrong. They had published it as Salijong and not Saljong. And I got to know that much later when the thing had already gone out for print. And I asked the editor that, this is like literally destroying my sole purpose for the documentation because I got the name wrong. And why did you change it? They said that, okay, it's the one and the same because in secondary research done previously by researchers, they have reported this god to be
Mm.
Salijong and not Saljong. And I said, okay, that's good, but the community is telling me that it's supposed to be Saljong and not Salijong. I mean, I keep repeating the names, but it's just that I got into that entire exchange and scuffle, and they said, no, we can't do anything about it. The books got printed, it was everywhere, and I was just so shaken, and I felt really bad to be, a part of this documentation where I could not even do anything about it. So, lesson learned. I was 20 back then, but ever after, whenever I have published anything, I've always told the editor that please make sure after you're done with your last draft, then you're going to send it to publishing. Just please show it to me so that I can show the community who have reported it on, just to get the facts right. I mean, just to get those at least the spellings right. I know it translates differently in English if you're documenting a native language, but even then, I mean, I do not want the community to feel that, okay, my story has been just morphed and documented incorrectly. So I think, yeah, I mean, this segueing a little bit here, but I think that was one key lesson that I learned, and now I'm extra, extra, extra careful whenever I'm going into a situation like this.
Yeah, I think you highlight a really big and important problem that exists in anthropological history documentation, and is the how does one value the local community in terms of like the credibility, because as you mentioned, a secondary research, especially if it's been published in a journal, has this air of authority that often overshadows the histories of the people who are actually experiencing it. And I think that's a really great point to bring up here, so thank you for sharing that personal experience. Oh, it's such a frustration to me. I could go on about that all
Yeah.
day, of who gets the right to tell someone's story as well.
Yes.
And coming back to that, I'd love to kind of bend the river back to the River Ganga and your relationship to it. First, I
Amazing.
kind of, before we get into your kind of closeness, I'm very curious how you came back to your home space with such curiosity. I find that if you're, the place that you're born can kind of feel, accustomed, it's normal. How did you take the curiosity and interest that you find when you're taking photographs of something unfamiliar back to your home spaces?
Wow. No, it really takes me back, this question. I mean, I'm literally visualizing the river right now as you speak, and it's beautiful. It's the most serene experience I think I would ever have in my life. And I've had a couple of experiences here and there, but I still believe that going back to my river, and I'm putting all the agency on that river to be my river because I know I'm a part of it, and she, the mother deity, is a part of me now through whatever lineage we've shared. It's just the fact that your home place seems so normal and natural to you, and especially if you've visited the same place over and over and over again, um, that also loses its charm, and you can't find anything new to appreciate in it. I think what for me really, really mattered was that there was this another concept of seeing, a way of seeing that my father left me with. It was to find the magic in the mundane, the
Mm-hmm.
extraordinary in the ordinary. And the river itself is infinite. I mean, every second it's changing its flow, it's changing the people that interact with it. People, uh, the people are born on the river, people die by the river. The last rites are performed right on the shores, and Ganga plays a major part in any person's life, for that matter, especially if they're a practicing Hindu. Because in our religious, cultural, and mythological belief, we know that it's a heavenly river. And just to see different things happening all together at the same time, at different points of time, even, that was quite fascinating to me. And slowly and steadily, when I started observing these connections that people hold to the river, and it can be through very mundane and basic daily activities like washing your feet in the river, or taking a bath in it, or washing your clothes in the river, which also has a lot of environmental implications. Um, I think immersing idols in the river, which is another practice that we have, especially in Kolkata, in the place where I'm from, we have this puja, this festival or this prayer and invocation to the goddess Durga. And she, with her entire family of children and her husband, they all visit the mortal world through the river, and they are sent back to, or we bid them farewell to the heavenly abode through the river. So the sculpture, when it comes in, the sculpture is made from the mud that you get on the riverbed, and then they really make some fascinating sculptures right across my house in this place called Kumartuli, and then we worship the goddess and her children for about 10 days, out of which 5 are mainly celebrated. And then on the last day, when we bid her farewell, we immerse the idol again inside the river water, and that mud slowly dissolves and dissipates to settle on the bank. And on the next year, you dig up that mud, and then you create another idol. So that cyclic nature of things, these small little phenomena that you can capture by the river, those are really fascinating to me. And I think for anybody living in a space which is semi-urban, I don't know how else to put it, because it's a mix of city, but also has a lot of history to it. It has a lot of anthropological grounding in the way society functions around the river and how livelihoods are derived from the river. And then you have such a huge cultural innuendo surrounding the Ganga, that the river is a mother deity, the harbinger of life, the cradle of civilization. You just get fascinated by it. You can't help but get fascinated by it. And just one last thing about this, when I got one of my first photos published on the National Geographic for Short platform, uh, the senior editor of that platform, David Wiley, he commented on one of my photographs, which was of two people playing a game of carom by the river, and it was like after sunset, and there was a balance between the ambient light and the natural light and everything. And then he said that you make me want to go to this place. And I thought, okay, I mean, I feel like I'm onto something here, because if I can show my river and the places next to it, the people next to it, to someone who has not experienced it in this way, and they have a connect within themselves about this place and they really want to visit, I feel like, I should do more of this. So that really spiked up my encouragement to get things rolling, and, to document the river more and more.
When you take your photographs and you pick your ones that you're submitting either to a publication or for a competition, where does your relationship sit with the photographs? Do you like know it's going to be a winning shot, for example, or have there been ones that have surprised you in terms of the perception from the public?
No, I'm always in for a surprise. And you know what? I hate to say this, but I do not take myself so seriously. I mean, when I'm submitting to a photo competition, I literally feel like this is just for my own practice. I have no end game, no end result that's going to get me either too excited or too unhappy. You know, of course, it's great winning an award or getting recognized by a platform, but it just depends on how well you can come back to baseline and focus on the things that really matter to you. And pardon me for sounding like a very boring person, but I'm really like this. I enjoy the things that come with winning any competition, which is connecting with more people, getting more opportunities to document more stories, getting more support to do my photography, and getting my story out there. But the thing that I really don't connect with is the tag. Um, the thing that people come up to you and say, "Oh, wow, this happened," and I'm like, "Yeah, this was just another, part of my story, and it just unfolded, and that's how it was supposed to be, maybe." So that's that. But I have to tell you, though, I think one of the most significant awards that I won was for a photograph that I really hated, and I did not want to submit. So that has also happened.
What was the photograph?
It was it was lockdown, and we were all quarantined at our houses, and I took this photograph of these two hands, trying to break out of
Ah,
the, what I mean, the Sony one,
yes,
and
I know you're the photograph.
yeah, no, but it was crazy because I took that shot first of all inside my parents' bedroom, and every time I would pass my parents' bedroom at that point of time in the day, which was around 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I would see these shadows being cast on the curtains. And I would often wonder, maybe I can do something with it, maybe, frame like a photograph. But I am such an outdoor photographer. I do not like to stage my photographs. So then one day I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. And I told my mom, can you stand behind the curtain and like just place your hand like this, and I'll try to capture something interesting out of it. And we were all feeling we were all feeling that emotion at that point of time of being entrapped in our own reality at our own houses, not being able to escape the pandemic or anything that comes with it. So that really struck me that okay, maybe I can frame a story on this. And when I took the photograph, and then after I saw the photograph, I was like, no, this is just like, not my cup of tea. I don't want to send this anywhere. But the brief for the competition, for the Sony Awards in that month, was composition and design, and finding uh, the unfamiliar in the familiar spaces that you inherit. So it was almost like, inside my parents' bedroom, there's this, new kind of perspective that I found. So my dad told me, okay, submit it and we'll see. So I submitted it, and then slowly, I was announced as the month winner. And then after 6 months, after six other winners were announced, I was announced as the grand winner with all of them. And just also want to mention here that that was the first time in my life I realized how incredible the lens of a young person is. I mean, the other five winners along with me, they were just phenomenal. Like I still remember this Indian photographer called Ram Kaushalyan. He had this photograph of this of a fair, and this little kid sitting on one of those horse rides, and then it was moving, and he did a lovely pan with it. It was fantastic. So I was absolutely sure that I was not going to win uh, in the midst of such amazing people and their work. But I also did not think much of it. And then when I got to know, and then after that, when the results were announced publicly, and I got a lot of texts from so many young people around the world saying that, okay, this is great, we also want to learn more about your journey, tell us how you have shaped your photography career, and how you intend to do photography here on. Just to get that connection, to get those conversations going on, was great. And I think that's the part of my life up until now in my photography career that I cherish the most, being able to connect with so many people worldwide, being able to listen to such amazing young photographers tell about their journey. That was really, really fascinating. Yeah.
I love that story because it just kind of shows a testament of you really just have to show your work and put it into the universe, put it into the sphere of the realm, and then things will brew and manifest. Because I think a lot of
Yeah.
young creatives are especially, worried or super conscious about presenting stuff and kind of leaning into that vulnerability. And that's exactly what you did, is lean into a type of photography you don't necessarily love or that you aren't super familiar with. You just kind of played with really strict restraints of COVID. Like, this is your curtain in your house, just the most mundane kind of finding magic in the mundane, as you mentioned before, just this perfect accumulation of all those lessons and unexpected outcomes. And I think through your photography, at least from what I've seen and how we've discussed today, it's just so clear to me that perhaps why your photography sparks and sits with people so well is that you are there for the story, you are there for the moment, and you're not there for the, I guess, the praise and reward of what could come of it. And that's a really beautiful thing to say. Like, the artistry behind it is so essential to keeping that at the forefront of your goals so that that the full energy is really captured. So it's very awesome and inspiring to see your work through that way.
Thank you.
And then I guess I want to lean maybe quickly into a bit more practicals and pragmatic ways. What has been your experience like moving from photography as a hobby into these more publication environments? Has it been mostly through like a network thing and things kind of just fall into place, or are there specific steps that you've taken that perhaps might be useful to other photojournalist people who'd be interested and haven't really figured out how to get their way in?
The thing that has really helped me, and I'll be really pragmatic and practical here, not be that delusional philosopher anymore, is that I think, just getting your work out there, but also having multiple channels for it is really essential. I do not just show my work to only the photographer community or, for that instance, the environmental community or the conservation community. I show it to the fintech people. I show it to the startup bros. I show it to the VCs and the policymakers and everybody I could find in my ambit of search. I try to, get my artistry, my story, my photographs, everything familiar with them, because we try to perceive it as such like different ends of the spectrum, and we're always in a fight, rightfully so, with, yeah, I would say, the ultra capitalists and people who are really concerned about the environment. But I feel like there should be one point of communication and connect where you have to have like a sit down talk with these people and understand why they are taking the decisions that they are taking. So all in all, what I mean to say is that um, your work should speak for itself, but you should be the person making your work shown to the rest of the world without any bias. You have to reach uh, all people. Like, I show my work with the equal amount of importance to a curator of a gallery as I would to the person who I documented. Um, and everywhere I go, and this is a recent habit, when people ask me, when they see me with a camera in my hand, and they ask me, hey, are you a vlogger? And are you like one of those influencers and whatever? And I say that, okay, maybe I am, I don't know, why is that relevant to you? And they say, okay, no, the influencers are like this and that, and, the entire popular notion with them. And I say, okay, you got to put your judgment out for a second, calm down, and think about what work we are all trying to do here. And let me show you my Instagram. And I literally make them follow me on Instagram every point of time. I mean, I tell them, okay, this is my work. Here you can find it. I do not make them follow me. I'm just kidding. But I really like tell them, okay, this is what I'm doing. And, you should know about this. If you see a random person with a camera in their hand shooting and, going in at these weird angles and doing all of that, just know that they're up to something. They're just not, taking the fun out of the moment or whatever, not destroying your personal space and whatever. They're trying to do something. So here's what I do, and just see through the work. So that's one part of it. And I would say networking is another concept that we say out loud in a very casual manner that, okay, we need to network and we need to know more people. But networking is just, for me, it's just about finding a value proposition in my own work rather than in what I can do with the other person. So if I can consider myself to be valuable and my work to be valuable to, let's say, a venture capitalist, a VC, then I know there might be a potential collaboration between us. And I know I will push for it because they also need to know about what's happening in the rest of the world, aside from the finances and whatever they are concerned with. And I also need to know about what they are working on because in India, I'll tell you, over the last 2, 3, 4 years, uh, climate investments have really like started multiplying and they have risen up exponentially. And I was always a documentaire capturing stories of primarily environmental justice. And now I work for a program that is designed to empower young people to get into the climate finance, climate investment, sustainability, agricultural sustainability space. So um, it's a very new field to me, but I'm really learning a lot about how various sectors perceive the environment and climate change and nature and communities and grassroots conservation. So I would say for any young people, if you're trying to get your work out there, reach as many potential well-wishers or collaborators you can find. Do not limit yourself to your niche. Rather, get the feedback of everyone who is in your ambit. And slowly you will find much more meaning in the work that you do. And maybe you can also drive some significant change and impact through various avenues if you are successful in this process.
Great advice. To reiterate, make sure you believe in your value proposition for yourself. And then I just love the idea of reframing networking as not a transactional situation, but also about learning and again leaning into that curiosity that you have in your photographs. It seems like you're leaning into curiosity with your networking as well, and that kind of is a core function of the existence. That's very wonderful. So now we will lead into our mini segment towards the end: conservation or storytelling, hot takes, warm takes, piping hot, boiling, just has to be slightly hot in some capacity. Do you have a hot
Yeah.
take for today?
All right. I hope this does not get me killed. It's not that hot. I would say it's like lukewarm, but I feel like we're wasting our time putting our attention to the bigger story. I mean, yeah, I understand that conservation at a global level has to concern the bigger elements like melting ice caps, rising temperatures, rising sea levels, and whatnot. But as an individual, those ideas are so abstract to you that you fail to connect with them. I mean, you cannot possibly uh, feel the the Himalayan Gangotri glacier, which is the primary source of the river Ganga, retreating over 200 years. Like you cannot feel it. You know it as a fact and it bothers you. But if the story is all about that, you cannot feel it. Maybe the story can be about the inhabitants of the Gomukh region, of the Gangotri region, who are susceptible to the change and who are losing their livelihoods, their places of inhabitation, their cattle, their water, potable water, their families, and their loved and near ones because of that. I mean, the story needs to have a local approach. It cannot be of something that's so big that you fail to comprehend the scale of it. I mean, I know that the ozone layer has been depleting and now it's not, but I really don't know what to do with that information. It's so massive. I'd rather find a little bit of connection towards the fact that because of that, a string of events has happened that has led to probably, and this is no way related to that, of maybe a bird species coming back to India, and I can see them outside my window when I look at them. So I think just to have that local approach, just to have that immediacy of connection goes a long way. And I loved watching National Geographic of all channels and Discovery and Animal Planet and looking at these huge animals and these amazing, marine animals. But now I'm more interested about stories about the monkeys in Delhi and the dogs in Delhi and the crows in my neighborhood. So I think it's changing. I'm trying to locate myself in my Anthropocene and the near and dear elements of mine. I'm just trying to make connection out of it. So all in all, I would say that conservation is a huge topic. We need to work on it relentlessly, I would say, right now. And now is the time for everyone to step up and take their small little steps, but it should be made more relatable. So focus on the smaller story, connect it with the larger picture, and you'll see that you have a lot of potential to make changes in your own vicinity.
I agree.
Whoa.
I completely agree. I think by making it digestible and bringing it down to the local, not only does it make it understandable and communicable, but it gives the people, the common people, a lot more agency to recognizing that it is happening all across the world in a way that you can understand it, but also in your own backyard. It's not just the polar bears in the Arctic or the penguins in the Antarctic. It is every single space in between on a very subtle scale. And it's through that attention to our locality, the mundane magic, that we can begin to solve those problems. Well, thank you, Pubarun, for that beautiful take. This is the conclusion of a wonderful, enchanting episode. Thank you so much for joining. I've learned a lot through this conversation, through the artistry and the craft behind photography, but then also the relationship to people and the environment and how to kind of carve out a space for those stories to be told, and remembering the importance of even the smallest nuances of our existence. Now, if listeners would like to reach out to you or find your work, where should they go?
Okay, amazing. I think this is the most important section. No, if anyone wants to reach out to me, please send me a text on Instagram. I have a public account. It's by the name Pubarun.Basu, easy to find. And you can also visit my website for some of the work that I have done. Some of the projects are listed there. It's also called www.pubarunbasu.com. But I do have something great to share with all of you. Is the fact that for probably the first time, I have decided that, okay, I've spent a lot of time traveling and taking photographs just by myself. Let me do it for the community. So the next year in May, I am leading this photo tour, this photo retreat, more of an immersive learning experience in Bali, where you can spend about 6 days with me, go around the place. We'll visit these ancient shrines and these temples and rediscover nature and a part of ourselves. So if you're interested in that, I think I'll soon be posting it on my Instagram. And please keep an eye out. And I hope I can see you, some of you there, to join the trip. And, together we can create at dawn and edit at dusk and all of those romantic kind of, delusional philosophical things that I often end up doing by myself. We can do it together as a community. So I'll really look forward to that. And thank you, Stephanie, for having me. It's been an amazing conversation. I must say that you've made me revisit my childhood more than anything. And I think today I'm going to be more happy than I have in a while. So thank you for that. And I really appreciate the work you're doing. So I hope we can collaborate sometime together.
Yes, thank you so much for joining once again. And so this was Resilience Tracks. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for our next episode.